In recent days, we've seen an escalation of conflicts in the Middle East, and in recent months, we've seen the continuation of attritional warfare in Eastern Europe without any signs of peace in sight. All the while, our border sees non-stop invasion as civil servants of the state are unwilling or forbidden from turning the foreigner caravans away. What we're witnessing is a growing list of proxy wars that threaten ever closer to world war. This would be a war that our nation simply couldn't emerge from in strength. Our infrastructure is crumbling, the opioid epidemic inflicts mass murder every day, our industry has been deported, and our communities are engulfed in chaos stemming from uncontrolled immigration. Our dwindling rights and our often defenseless constitutional principles would be utterly devastated, if not eradicated, by the very conflict we seem to be stumbling into. In the modern world of short clips and headlines, it's easy to lose perspective. It's easy to lose the big picture. For my whole life, the government has waged these wars, and there's nothing to show for it. Our country has become a dumping ground for the world's migrants and a staging ground for every ethnic rivalry in the world, to be played out among our communities and our governments, so that our once homogeneous society can be rent 100 different ways. One is left to wonder if this is the strength of diversity we are all supposed to believe in. When our state imports the foreign world, we're not just getting their restaurants, we're importing their vices, their crimes, their rivalries, and every single factor which made their native lands inhospitable to them. The government expects American men to live and fight and die for the territorial integrity of Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel. Some even go so far as to promote offensive wars against Mexico and Iran. To send these young men of our nation overseas or into foreign lands to fight for the homogeneous communities they themselves are denied by the very same state, for political rights to representation they're denied at home. It seems those in power must keep the country's attention elsewhere to hide the blood on their own hands. The state is wrenching the last drops of the fighting spirit from our national consciousness to perpetuate an increasingly precarious globalist liberal order. We have no obligation to zealously defend the sovereignty of a country like Israel, whose most vocal advocates would not and will not lift a finger to defend ours. The most prominent Zionist organization in this country, the Anti-Defamation League, slanders, maligns, vilifies, and above all defames those of us who wish to protect the territorial integrity, institutional dignity, and national sovereignty of America, all the while demanding the blood and toil of Americans to serve those very things in Israel. The hypocrisy is intentional. Foreign elements in this country are not loyal to the heritage of America or the political institutions outlined by our founders. America is an exploitable resource to them, just like any other. How is one meant to take the claims of such politically entrenched Zionists seriously when we have been slandered as terrorists with the same dehumanizing language now being used against the Palestinians? They use slander and labels like anti-Semitism to discourage free speech and censor the legitimate concerns Americans ought to have about the institutional, disproportionate power Zionist lobbies have in the United States. Should Americans be taking moral dictates from the international Jewish community whose political organizations promote the very same mass immigration and conflicts in the Middle East, which have humiliated our country for the entirety of the 21st century? The answer is, of course, no. Israel's brutal wars are only possible because their lobbyists and Zionist NGOs in the country have pickpocketed every single American taxpayer to the tune of billions. Peace is not possible when violence is subsidized. Simply put, Israel has racked up a debt of Zionism that will not be paid in American blood. We have nothing in common with these people at war with one another in the Middle East, and we have no interest in importing the barbarity of their endless strife into our country. America is not a nation that has cultural compatibility with these nations, nor should it make any concession whatsoever on the basis of political convenience. As an American, I believe in the sovereignty of nations. However, that does not extend cleanly or automatically to nations whose legitimacy can be questioned, or whose sovereignty comes at the extermination of another. I believe in freedom of religion as an American, but that extends only so far as my countrymen and my culture. Alien faiths and foreign spirits have no compatibility with the rights and freedoms outlined for moral, educated American citizens of common ancestry. That was the outline for our American Republic, beyond which every extension is an affront to the vision of our founders. The notion that we must take a side in each and every conflict is flawed and artificial, driven by mass media. We have only one side to take, that of our people, our American nation, of the European race, of our families and communities within this nation. That is our side, in this conflict, in every conflict, first and forever. An America First perspective demands that we put the defense of our infrastructure, our borders, and our institutions before anyone else. The present relationship between the United States and Israel is not one of mutual defense, it's political cuckoldry. The defense of this country must be reimagined and reforged from the perspective that it exists for, from, and by the nation to which it owes its existence. It must be rooted firmly in the natural laws and characteristics of humanity. We call for no more foreign wars, but we propose likewise a new and a different war, a spiritual war, a war of virtue against vice, a war for the rediscovery of our land and heritage, a war against apathy and decay. That is our war. It's a war of defense, and it's a war that has been ongoing. It's waged with words more than weapons, and new men join its front lines every day. Our organization and our ideals cannot dictate the terms of these global conflicts or the domestic policies that perpetuate them, but there is an impact to be made. We can, and we are, setting an example for generations to come. We're building a brotherhood in a national community that seeks every day to uphold and promote the virtues that a proper government ought to stand for. A nation within a nation, a mirror held to the face of tyranny, and an alternative visible in every town across this continent. We're creating men by the hundreds who won't stand for the lies, who won't crack under the pressure, and who won't stop until we have a state that not only represents our interests, but places them first.